The dust kicked up by the approaching wagon settled slowly in the afternoon heat, and 11-year-old Sarah May pressed her face against the cracked window of their one-room cabin. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she watched her father emerge from the barn, wiping his hands on a dirty rag. The men climbing down from the wagon wore suits despite the sweltering Texas heat, and their faces carried the hard expressions of debt collectors. "Papa," Sarah May whispered, though he couldn't hear her through the glass. She had known this day would come. The whispered conversations between her parents late at night, the way her mother's eyes had grown red and swollen from crying, the empty pantry that stayed empty no matter how hard they worked their small plot of land. The drought had lasted 3 years, and their debts had piled up like tumbleweeds against a fence. Her father approached the men with his shoulders squared, but Sarah May could see the defeat in his walk. She had inherited his stubborn streak, but at 11, she understood that sometimes stubbornness wasn't enough to fight the world. The conversation outside grew heated. Through the thin walls, she could hear fragments of angry words. $63.18, one of the men was saying. Plus interest and fees, that brings your total to $94.12. "I don't have it," her father replied, his voice cracking. "The crop failed again. I can give you $20 and work off the rest." "That's not how this works, Johnson. You sign papers. We need payment in full, or we take collateral." Sarah May's mother, Emma, sat at their small wooden table, her hands folded in her lap. She hadn't spoken all morning, but tears streamed down her weathered cheeks. At 32, she looked 50 from the hard prairie life and constant worry. "There has to be another way." Emma finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. The door burst open, and the 3 men entered without invitation. The tallest one, wearing a black suit and a badge that marked him as some kind of legal official, looked around the sparse cabin with disgust. "This is what we're dealing with," he said to his companions. "Nothing here worth taking except the girl." Sarah May's blood turned to ice water. She had heard stories from other children about what happened when families couldn't pay their debts. Children were sometimes taken as indentured servants, bound to work for years to pay off what their parents owed. The practice was legal in their county, though most folks pretended it didn't happen. "She's just a child," her father protested, stepping between Sarah May and the men. "She's old enough to work," the official replied coldly. "The Hendersons need a house girl. They've agreed to pay off your debt in exchange for 7 years of service. She'll be fed and housed, which is more than you can provide." Sarah May wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. Their cabin sat in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by miles of empty prairie. Even if she could escape, she had no money, no food, and no family anywhere else who could take her in. Her mother stood up slowly, her chair scraping against the wooden floor. "Please," she begged, "give us more time. We'll find a way to pay." "Time's up, ma'am. The girl comes with us now, or we take everything you own and you'll all starve anyway." Sarah May felt her world crumbling around her. She thought of her few possessions, her mother's lullabies, the way her father taught her to read by the firelight. All of it would be gone in a matter of minutes. The sound of approaching horses interrupted the tense scene. Through the window, Sarah May could see a cloud of dust much larger than what the debt collector's wagon had raised. The rumbling grew louder, and soon the thunder of dozens of hooves filled the air. "What in tarnation?" the official muttered, moving to the window. A massive group of riders approached the cabin, led by a man on a magnificent black stallion. Even from a distance, Sarah May could see that this was no ordinary cowboy. His horse's tack gleamed with silver, and his hat was pristine white, unmarked by trail dust. The riders behind him wore matching outfits and rode in perfect formation. The lead rider dismounted with fluid grace and approached the cabin. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with steel-gray eyes and a mustache that was perfectly groomed despite the long ride. His boots were polished leather, and his spurs jingled with each step. Everything about him spoke of wealth and power. "Gentlemen," he said as he entered the cabin without knocking, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I believe you're conducting business with the Johnson family." The debt collector in the black suit puffed up his chest. "This is private business, mister. You have no standing here." The wealthy stranger smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm Nathaniel Blackwood. Perhaps you've heard of me." The change in the room was immediate. Sarah May had heard the name whispered in town with a mixture of fear and respect. Nathaniel Blackwood owned more land than anyone in 3 counties, controlled the largest cattle operation in the state, and had enough money to buy and sell small towns. Some said he was ruthless in business. Others claimed he was fair but demanded absolute loyalty. Everyone agreed that crossing him was a mistake few people made twice. Mr. Blackwood, the official stammered, suddenly looking much less confident. We weren't expecting you. This is just a simple debt collection. Nothing involving the exploitation of children is simple, Blackwood replied, his voice deadly calm. What exactly is the nature of this debt? The official fumbled with his papers. $94.12, sir. The family can't pay, so we're taking the girl as indentured labor. Blackwood's expression darkened. Indentured labor? You mean slavery? It's perfectly legal, sir. The contracts are all in order. Legal doesn't mean right. Blackwood reached into his vest and pulled out a leather wallet thick with bills. What did you say the amount was? $94.12. But sir, we already have arrangements with the Hendersons. The Hendersons will have to find their help elsewhere. Blackwood counted out bills with deliberate precision. Here's $100. That covers the debt and your trouble. The debt collectors looked at each other uncertainly. $100 was more money than they had expected to see in months, but backing down from a legal seizure could set a dangerous precedent. Sir, the official said carefully, the girl is already legally bound to the Hendersons. They've paid her indenture fee. Blackwood's smile turned predatory. How much did they pay? $50, sir. Blackwood counted out more bills. Here's $150 for the Hendersons. That should compensate them for their inconvenience and lost expectations. The room fell silent except for the ticking of the old clock on the mantel. Sarah May held her breath, afraid to hope that this stranger might actually save her from 7 years of servitude. Mr. Blackwood, the official said slowly, I appreciate your generosity, but the law is the law. We can't just change legal arrangements because someone offers more money. Can't you? Blackwood's voice carried a dangerous edge. I own the bank that holds the mortgage on your office building. I control the shipping contracts that keep your business profitable. I employ half the men in this county, including several of your relatives. Are you certain you want to test the limits of what I can and cannot do? The threat was delivered so calmly that it took a moment for its full impact to register. Sarah May watched the debt collectors' faces change as they realized they were not dealing with just another wealthy rancher, but with a man who held their livelihoods in his hands. The official cleared his throat nervously. Perhaps we can work out an arrangement that satisfies everyone. The arrangement is simple, Blackwood replied. You take my money, you tear up those indenture papers, and you leave this family in peace. In return, I don't make some phone calls that would make your lives very difficult. The debt collectors exchanged glances, and Sarah May could see the moment they decided not to fight a battle they couldn't win. The official took the money with shaking hands and pulled out the papers that would have bound Sarah May to 7 years of service. These contracts are hereby voided, he announced, tearing the documents in half. The debt is paid in full. As quickly as they had arrived, the debt collectors packed up their wagon and left, kicking up dust in their haste to get away from Nathaniel Blackwood's cold stare. When they were gone, an uncomfortable silence settled over the cabin. Sarah May's parents stood frozen, unsure how to react to their sudden salvation. The man who had just saved their daughter was a stranger, and his motives were unclear. Blackwood turned his attention to Sarah May for the first time, studying her with those steel-gray eyes. She was small for 11, made smaller by poor nutrition and hard work, but her chin was raised defiantly, and her green eyes blazed with intelligence and spirit. What's your name, child? He asked gently. Sarah May Johnson, sir, she replied, her voice steady despite her fear. Sarah May, he repeated thoughtfully. Do you know how to read? Yes, sir. Papa taught me. And write? Yes, sir. Blackwood nodded approvingly. Good. Education is important. He turned to her parents. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, I have a proposition for you. Sarah May's father stepped forward protectively. What kind of proposition? I need someone to help manage the household accounts at my ranch. Someone trustworthy, intelligent, and detail-oriented. The work would involve keeping track of supplies, managing correspondence, and helping with various administrative tasks. In return, I would provide housing, food, clothing, and a generous salary. Emma Johnson frowned. You're talking about taking our daughter away from us. I'm talking about giving her opportunities she'll never have here, Blackwood replied bluntly. Look around you. This land is dying. The drought isn't going to end anytime soon, and you'll face the same problems next year that you faced this year. Sarah May is bright. She deserves better than watching her family slowly starve. The words stung because they were true. Sarah May could see the defeat in her parents' faces, the knowledge that they couldn't provide for her the way they wanted to. What exactly are you offering? Her father asked quietly. Sarah May would live at my ranch and work as my assistant. She would receive proper meals, new clothes, and continued education. I would pay her $20 a month, which she could send home to help support you. After 3 years, if she chooses to stay, I would increase her salary to $30 a month. $20 a month was more money than Sarah May's family saw in 6 months. It would mean the difference between survival and slow starvation for her parents. And if she wants to leave? Emma asked. She's free to go at any time. This isn't indenture, Mrs. Johnson. This is employment. Sarah May would be my employee, not my property. Sarah May looked back and forth between her parents and the wealthy stranger who had just changed her life. She was 11 years old, and the decision being made would determine her entire future. What kind of work would I be doing? She asked. Blackwood smiled, and this time it seemed genuine. You would help me keep track of my business correspondence, maintain inventory records, and assist with various administrative tasks. You would also continue your education. I have an extensive library, and I would expect you to spend at least 2 hours each day reading and studying. The offer was almost too good to believe. Sarah May had always been hungry for learning, but books were expensive and rare in their isolated community. The chance to have access to an entire library was like being offered a treasure chest. I would want to visit my parents, she said. Of course, once a month, weather permitting. Sarah May looked at her parents, seeing the hope and fear warring in their expressions. They wanted what was best for her, but they were also terrified of losing their only child. Papa, she said quietly, I think I should go. Her father's shoulders sagged. Sarah May, you don't have to do this. We'll find another way. What other way? She asked, her voice gentle but firm. The land is dying, and we're dying with it. Mr. Blackwood is offering me a chance to help you and to make something of myself. I have to take it. Emma Johnson began to cry again, but these tears were different from the desperate sobs of the morning. These were the tears of a mother who knew her child was making a wise but heartbreaking decision. When would she start? Her father asked. Today, if she's willing, Blackwood replied. I have supplies in my saddlebags that should help you get through the next few months, and Sarah May's first month's salary in advance. He handed over another roll of bills, and Sarah May's father stared at the money as if it might disappear. Why are you doing this? Emma asked. You don't know us. You don't owe us anything. Blackwood was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant. I was 12 when my parents died, he said finally. I was lucky enough to find someone who gave me a chance when I needed it most. Sometimes we get the opportunity to pass that kind of luck along. Sarah May spent the next hour packing her few belongings into a small cloth bag. She owned 2 dresses, both patched and faded, a pair of worn boots, and a few small treasures including a carved wooden horse her father had made for her birthday. As she prepared to leave the only home she had ever known, Sarah May tried to memorize every detail. The way the afternoon light slanted through the cracked window, the smell of her mother's cooking, the sound of her father's voice as he hummed while working. She didn't know when she would see these things again. The goodbye was harder than she had expected. Her mother held her so tightly that Sarah May could barely breathe, whispering promises to write letters and prayers for safety. Her father's eyes were wet as he knelt down to her level. You remember who you are, he told her firmly. You're a Johnson, and Johnsons don't give up. You work hard, you be respectful, but you don't let anyone make you feel small. You understand. I understand, Papa. And if you ever want to come home, you come home. Don't matter what anyone says, this will always be your home. Sarah May nodded, not trusting her voice to remain steady. Blackwood helped her mount a gentle mare, and she settled into the saddle with the awkward grace of someone who had ridden farm horses but never a properly trained riding horse. The mare responded to the slightest touch, and Sarah May felt a thrill of excitement despite her sadness. As they rode away from the cabin, Sarah May turned back once to wave at her parents. who stood in the doorway looking small and fragile against the vast emptiness of the prairie. Then she faced forward, toward whatever future awaited her at Nathaniel Blackwood's ranch. The ride took 3 hours, and Sarah May spent most of it in stunned silence, trying to process the rapid changes in her life. That morning she had been facing 7 years of indentured servitude. Now she was riding toward a job that would pay her more money than her family had ever seen. Blackwood rode beside her, occasionally pointing out landmarks or making casual conversation, but he seemed to understand that she needed time to adjust. His men rode in formation around them, and Sarah May noticed that they all carried themselves with the same quiet confidence as their boss. When they crested a hill, and Sarah May saw Blackwood's ranch spread out below them, she gasped audibly. The main house was larger than any building she had ever seen, a sprawling 2-story structure with a wide porch and multiple chimneys. Outbuildings dotted the landscape, including barns, stables, and what looked like housing for dozens of workers. Cattle grazed in fenced pastures that stretched to the horizon. "Welcome to the Double B Ranch," Blackwood said, noting her amazement. "It's been in my family for 15 years, since I was about your age." "How many people work here?" Sarah May asked. "About 60 year-round. More during roundup and branding season." 60 people. Sarah May had never seen 60 people in one place in her entire life. As they approached the main house, a woman emerged from the front door. She was middle-aged, with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun and a no-nonsense expression that reminded Sarah May of the schoolteacher back in town. "Mrs. Patterson," Blackwood called as they dismounted. "I'd like you to meet Sarah May Johnson. She'll be helping me with administrative work." Mrs. Patterson looked Sarah May up and down with sharp eyes, taking in the patched dress and worn boots. But her expression was kind when she spoke. "Welcome, Sarah May. I'm the housekeeper here. I'll show you to your room and help you get settled." Sarah May's room was on the second floor of the main house, with a real window that had glass and curtains. The bed was larger than the one her parents shared, with clean sheets and a thick quilt. There was a desk, a chair, and a wardrobe that was currently empty but would soon be filled with new clothes. "Mr. Blackwood said you'd need some proper work clothes," Mrs. Patterson explained, opening a trunk at the foot of the bed. "I took the liberty of having some things made up. We can adjust them if they don't fit properly." The clothes were simple but well-made, far better quality than anything Sarah May had ever owned. There were several dresses suitable for office work, a warm coat, new boots, and even undergarments that weren't patched or mended. "This is too much," Sarah May whispered. "Nonsense," Mrs. Patterson replied briskly. "Mr. Blackwood expects his employees to be properly dressed. You represent him now, and appearance matters in business." That evening, Sarah May ate dinner in the main house dining room, a vast space with a table that could seat 20 people. Blackwood sat at the head of the table, and she sat to his right, feeling very small in the high-backed chair. The meal was the best she had ever eaten. There was roast beef, potatoes with butter, fresh vegetables, and bread that was still warm from the oven. For dessert, there was apple pie with thick cream. Sarah May tried to eat slowly and remember her manners, but it was difficult when every bite was a revelation. "Tomorrow we'll start your training," Blackwood said as they finished the meal. "I'll show you the office and explain your duties. Mrs. Patterson will help you establish a routine that includes time for your regular education." "What kind of education?" Sarah May asked. "Reading, writing, arithmetic, geography, history. The basics that every educated person should know. I've also arranged for you to have piano lessons once a week, if you're interested." Piano lessons. Sarah May had never even seen a piano up close, let alone imagine that she might learn to play one. "Why are you doing all this for me?" she asked, echoing her mother's earlier question. Blackwood set down his coffee cup and studied her seriously. "Because you have potential, Sarah May. I can see intelligence in your eyes and determination in the way you carry yourself. With the right opportunities, you could accomplish anything you set your mind to. Without those opportunities, you'll spend your life struggling just to survive. But what do you get out of it?" He smiled. "I get a capable assistant, and eventually, I hope, a trusted business partner. Good people are hard to find, Sarah May. When you find them, it's worth investing in them." That night, Sarah May lay in her new bed staring at the ceiling and trying to make sense of her dramatically changed circumstances. 12 hours earlier, she had been facing 7 years of unpaid labor. Now she was living in luxury and being offered opportunities she had never dared to dream about. She thought about her parents, alone in their small cabin, and felt a pang of guilt for the comfort surrounding her. But she also felt a growing determination to make the most of this chance, not just for herself, but for them. The money she would send home could make the difference between survival and prosperity for her family. As she drifted off to sleep, Sarah made herself a promise. She would work harder than anyone expected, learn everything she could, and prove that Nathaniel Blackwood's faith in her was justified. She would not waste this opportunity. The next morning began her new life in earnest, and Sarah Mae Johnson, 11-year-old daughter of failed farmers, took her first steps toward becoming someone she had never imagined she could be.